Hello, my name is Tony Myers and I'm from Oliver Myers Properties.
Here we go!
Real people, real community, real estate agent.
Let me introduce Tony Myers. Tony is Australia's authority on real estate investment for busy professionals. With over 30 years' experience in the business, Tony has worked in every area of real estate and then finally as the owner and director of his own company, Oliver Myers Properties. Many business professionals are interested in ensuring that their retirement is worry-free, and it's hard to guarantee that they won't run out of money before they run out of life. It is through this vehicle that Tony has found a firm foundation for retirement for his clients. It's a Do Not Run Out of Money Before You Run Out of Life, episode 2 of the podcast. Let me introduce your host, Craig Fisher. All right, so Tony, tell us a little bit about your story.
My story, Craig, thank you for the opportunity first to be able to explain my story. I've been in real estate for over 35 years, and many years ago, I had decided to retire. I had had a lot of successful years in real estate, and I decided it was time for a break. So we sold the business, and we had the opportunity during that break to learn a little bit more about how other opportunities arise. And I was given a short-term project with Wallara Council, 3-month project which lasted 9 years. So that was very good. But during that time, I learned a lot about people, and particularly people who were looking to retire and really had either made no plans or made very few plans.
Yeah, there's a lot of that out there, isn't there?
There's a lot of that. So we decided then that we would best be able to serve the real estate community by specialising in properties where people could then buy and move to in later years or do something with their superannuation.
So what was your inspiration for creating?
Well, travelling to Sydney, of course, by rail, I saw the same people standing in the same spot, day after day, year after year. So they were getting older, but they hadn't done much about their retirement. So that was the initial inspiration, but it was my niece who said to me, guess what I've done? And what she had done, she looked forward to the future and bought herself some real estate to look forward to being able to retire with some degree of comfort.
How old was she then?
She was 32.
32, all right. So she's an early mover and shaker in that direction?
Absolutely. And that was what then inspired us to go out and look into what we could do that would be different to what everyone else is doing now, and create a niche market.
Yeah, well, you've certainly achieved that. There's no doubt about that. The direction that you've got your company in, there's really no one that does it quite like you.
Well, thank you, Craig. I like to think that we're doing it fairly well, but there's also a need for constant improvement, and that's one of the things that we find. We've got a great team. There's only 3 of us.
That
but
you do?
My daughter gave up a very high-paying job with a pharmaceutical company to come and join us because she's the nuts and bolts. She is the one that makes it work. She does the things that I can't do.
That's Karen?
That's Karen.
Yes. Shout out to Karen.
Yeah. So my role is the sort of go out there, talk to developers, talk to people, investigate, review, and really look at where we're going to be in the future. And an example I give you, 3, 4, 5 years ago, Western Suburbs was a place people knew about but didn't really know about. And now you go to the Western Suburbs, it's getting further and further out, and that's where people want to be. So,
by Western Suburbs, you mean how far west are we talking now?
As far west as the new airport.
So Badgerys Creek?
Badgerys Creek.
Yeah.
So we've looked and identified and seen what's happened there, and prices have gone through the roof. So
absolutely, they have.
It means that people can't afford to buy. So we've tried to look at where else you could go. And even we've not ignored, when we've not isolated, not removed interstate opportunities.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that then. Right. So there's been the saturation that's happened in Sydney as far as pricing goes, price levels.
Yes.
So there's been a push. Is it further north? How far north are we talking? We're through to the Central Coast and further up? How far?
Well, we're through the Central Coast and we're further up into the Hunter Valley. Newcastle has always been the largest regional economy in Australia, and as a result of that, it's self-supporting, which means that it can move west and identify areas like Cessnock, Maitland, and now out as far as, out to Lochinvar, even as far out as Greta. And then you come back round into that very large development around Rothbury, at Huntley. So that's where the large amount of population is now looking towards, to be able to get into an area where you've got the right infrastructure, you've got jobs, you've got schools, you've got investments. And I always look right at the beginning when we first started in this, where do we identify a location that we know is going to grow? And what we found was, if it has a McDonald's or a Bunnings, you're on the right track, because they spend a fortune on research and investigation. So that was one of the points that we used to identify a growing area.
Okay. So with the consumer heading towards that, is that more of an investment, or is that more of a permanent, or is it a combination of both?
A lot of developers now are identifying their development as owner-occupiers.
So no investors allowed in those? Or?
Yes, some. Well, let me clarify that. There are some developments where they only want owner-occupiers, and that's great, that's fine. There are some other developments where they try and make it a 70-30 or 60-40 split.
Right.
So you don't have a cluster of the same house with the same frontage and the same... So they're trying to create a community where there's an opportunity for owner-occupiers, but also for people who can buy now that may want to move up there to live when they retire.
All right, so there's a nice mix in some of those communities as well. Yeah,
exactly.
And tell me, so how does what you do help people when it comes to buying and selling real estate?
Well, Craig, good question, and it deserves a good answer. And I think what we do that makes it identifies what we do and why we do it. People who want to live in Western Sydney, and there's millions of them, 3 or 4 years ago they could afford it. Now they can't. So those people now have to look at an area or location where they can afford it. And that's what our role is. Our role is to identify growth areas where you've got the right infrastructure, you've got schools, you've got transport, you've got industry and investment from both the private sector and government, and at the same time where land prices are still low and people can afford to buy. In Western Sydney, where you could afford to buy some years ago at 400,000, 500,000, now you can't. Gregory Hills was a perfect example. Now there's nothing left in Gregory Hills.
I was going to say, where do you buy for 400,000 or 500,000?
You can't now. You can't, and that's why we've had to look at and investigate areas where you can. Even the Central Coast is becoming more expensive. We have a new release at the moment, which is coming available very soon. But again, you're looking at late 500,000. To get into that 400,000, we're into areas of west of Newcastle, around Maitland, Cessnock, Farley. Farley is an area that was once farmland. Farley is now the growth area, the growth spurt in the Maitland location.
And how far is somewhere like Farley towards the CBD of Newcastle? What are we talking there? Is it a half an hour run, 40-minute run?
It's about a 40-minute run.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they do have a rail service that runs from there right through to Newcastle. But having said that, Maitland is becoming self-sufficient. Maitland is now providing work. It's got the schools. It's got the new hospital being built at Metford. So Maitland is becoming almost an identity in its own right. It's an area where people can work, can live, can play, and if they want to go to Newcastle or have to go to Newcastle, they can. Also, from there, you're not too far from the airport. So it's one of those areas where there's everything to attract the owner-occupier to be there, but also it allows people who want to retire in later years to buy there now, knowing that they can afford it.
So it's turning itself into like a Parramatta is for Sydney? Would that be fair to say? Is that where it's on track for heading? I
believe so. I believe Maitland's becoming, yes, that's a good analogy. It is becoming another Parramatta. Craig, one of the things that I think we need to look at, most people, if not the majority of people, want to own property. They need to own property. But they can't always afford to buy in the inner city or in the western suburbs. So what we are trying to do is to help them by saying, buy where you can afford, but rent where you have to live.
So, Tony, tell me, what does the future hold for Tony Myers and Oliver Myers as the company, the brand?
As a brand, we will look to expand to be able to support more people. As I said, we're a small business, and largely our database and our clients are people that have been referred to us or people that we've known for a long time. But we're starting to get more interest, more inquiry from other areas, other locations, and they are the people that we want to help. But we need to do it in such a way that the personal touch remains. It's important to us that we don't become so big that we lose that personal interest in the people we deal with.
Absolutely, it is. Customer service is paramount.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for joining me today, Tony.
It's a pleasure, Craig, and I really, really thank you for the opportunity to be here and share with you our story.
That was Australia's Real Estate Investment Authority, Tony Myers from Oliver Myers Properties. For more about real estate through investment for your retirement and how Tony can assist you, make sure you get a free copy of Tony's book, Wealth Through Property Investment. You can order a copy and discover more about Tony Myers at www.olivermyers.com.au.
Let me introduce Craig's first takeaway.
Okay, my number one takeaway from this interview: buy where you can afford and rent where you want to live. This is known as rent vesting. Rent vesting is a great way for first home buyers to enter the marketplace sooner rather than later. There are pros and cons to this property investment strategy, and every person's financial situation is different, so you will have to talk to your financial advisor to take a look at your individual circumstance. Thanks for tuning in to the Let Me Introduce podcast. And remember, if you've got a question about buying or selling real estate, feel free to reach out and give me a call or ask me on your preferred communication platform. Till next month, let me introduce real people, real community, real estate agents, your host, Craig Fisher.